Hello everyone, it's Susie again from Esoteric Trading Solutions. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all treating yourself well, looking after yourselves, getting plenty of sleep and eating properly, looking after your family and your friends, looking after your animals particularly, and being just generally kind to people in the world just to make this world a better place. What I'd like to talk about tonight is XRP and how XRP could potentially move from 53 cents to 334 US, which was my price valuation about 6 months ago in one trade. When we talk about markets can essentially trade wherever the buyer is prepared to buy something and where the seller is prepared to sell something. And it can be done at that level, and it can be done literally with one contract. So a market basically is where a buyer is prepared to what the buyer is prepared to pay and what the seller is prepared to sell, a contract for, a cryptocurrency contract. So, but before I do that, I'd just like to say we're doing a course on Kickstarter, and the course is about cryptocurrency markets. It's an online course, and I'm doing it with a colleague of mine who's also had 30 years in banking and the finance industry. The course is valued at 150 US, but on Kickstarter the course is going to be $50 US, and it's basically going to be a course of great content about cryptocurrency markets, an online course, simply because there's so much FUD around and we want to really get rid of some myths. It's going to include, each of the modules is going to include video, basically resource links, quizzes, practical exercises. There'll be subtitles, there'll be a lot of learning experience. It'll be about cryptos, their technologies, trading, all the technologies of crypto, exchanges, which exchanges you should look at, storage, and lots more. So it'd be a bit of fun, and that will be on Kickstarter in the next week or so. So I'd really appreciate if you basically supported me on that. That would be so much appreciative, because I do a lot of work, obviously. I had done a lot of work in the past for YouTube, and it would be very much appreciated if you did support that. And please do press on the subscribe button down below, and because that just makes me look good as well. So let's just go basically to the next slide. I'm still learning how to do this slide thing. This disclaimer is education only. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know your risk profile or your financial position or anything like that. So it's basically education only. So when we talk about the markets of cryptocurrency, there's a lot of different players in the market, as you know. And there can be basically fund managers or investment managers. She or he can be managing, say, a $40 billion multi-asset class investment fund. And what we mean by that is it could be equities, it could be, shares, of course, bonds, fixed interest, money market type securities. It could be, hybrid type securities. It could even be, high yield bonds, that sort of thing. But it also could be cryptocurrency. So, in other words, this particular fund manager might want to buy XRP and has a limit of basically 50 million, and he wants to buy that in the over-the-counter market. So, say we have another player that's a sales trader, investment bank, and this sales trader has large clients, basically, and his client effectively comes to the Middle East and they want to buy 35 million of XRP. The client basically says they want to get set in volume, over-the-counter trade, and pretty much they want it done ASAP. If we talk about the banks, there's also banks that are players within the cryptocurrency market. This is all at the institutional level. And these banks, for example, want to clear foreign exchange. So they use XRP, obviously, with XRapid, and they clear their foreign currency exchange 800 million using XRP to do that as a funding tool. Then we talk about, say, stock market players. Say, for example, Morgan Stanley came out the other day and said cryptocurrency is the new asset class. There's less than 1% of the world that's invested in cryptocurrencies. People want to sell their shares, for example. They may want to get out of shares completely because they're concerned about the share market falling. And effectively, the clients want to start buying cryptocurrency, which is the new asset class. So essentially, a client will tell their financial advisor or their stockbroker to basically sell down their share portfolio and to put the proceeds into XRP as soon as possible. And say those proceeds of, say, 40 million XRP, which will also be an over-the-counter trade, which I'll explain in a minute. So when we talk about retail clients, which is you, me, and, generally, small purchases of cryptocurrency, under 50,000 or under 25,000, we talk about retail clients, we call it a public order book. So on the cryptocurrency exchanges, we can see the orders going through, and we can see the buy-offer spreads going through on the public order book. If we talk about the over-the-counter market, the over-the-counter market basically is called a private order book. Okay, so large exchanges and large institutions will deal with brokers through an over-the-counter market. And those brokers will work for cryptocurrency exchanges. And they'll have a broker, a cryptocurrency broker, that gives them personalized service. A big institutionalized client will get personalized service from a cryptocurrency broker that works for an exchange. And it's basically a private order book that you don't see or I don't see, and it's not disclosed to the public. Now, generally these large crypto brokers will be regulated, and one's called ITBIT, which is regulated with the New York City, and it's regulated, it's a regulated financial services company, and they do large volume for clients. And what they'll do is they'll try and find a client on the other side that's happy to sell XRP. So say, for example, Morgan Stanley's got that buyer that wants to buy, 40 million, the person that wanted to get out of stocks, and, another client got the lady or the man from the Middle East that wants to buy some XRP. They'll go through an institutional broker and they'll do an over-the-counter trade, and that won't be disclosed to the public. Okay, and also the exchange will hold that cryptocurrency in cold storage or custodian lockup. So often the volume will not be disclosed. Now, Genesis will do a minimum of 100 mil. In the equity market, this over-the-counter volume would be disclosed within 2 days, but within crypto markets, we don't see that over-the-counter volume ever being disclosed. And generally what the exchanges will do is they'll charge whatever they where they find the buyer and the seller, they'll charge a 1% commission. Okay, so if we look at all the different cryptocurrency exchanges, which is another player within this cryptocurrency world, and we talk about XRP specifically, according to Coin Capital Markets, XRP has pairs on 258 markets, and some are more liquid than others, as you can tell by the volume, depending on which exchange you're talking about. Now, getting back to how something can trade just with one contract from, say, 53 cents to $334, it is possible. And last year we saw that with Bitcoin Cash. We saw all of a sudden on Coinbase, Bitcoin Cash traded from $2,000 to $9,000 or $9,500. And pretty much it went up with just one trade, straight up like that. Now, this does happen, even though this was an error and Coinbase unwound it, and anything subsequent to this got unwound. But this can happen, and certainly in fiat markets, this can happen, and generally the trade stands as is. Because in a market, if it's a bona fide buyer and a bona fide seller, and the buyer is prepared to buy something over and above where the market is, and it's legit, then the trade will go through, providing it's not considered illegal by the SEC and it's not considered spoofing of trades, where bids have been put in or offers have been put in, bid or buy, or offer or sell, and they're not real. If they're not real, then it's considered illegal and you can be prosecuted. Okay, so when they're real, and it actually happens, because as I said before, going back to my explanation at the start of this presentation, a market is what a buyer is prepared to buy something for, and what a seller is prepared to sell something for, okay? And that's pretty much what a market is. So if we go to the next slide, XRP, and again, it comes back to also the circulating. We know with XRP, coin capital markets talk about a circulating supply of 40.2 billion, okay? Now, XRP, its emission is fixed, which means basically, unlike Ethereum, we know exactly how much circulating supply they have according to this, even though it may not be correct, and we know the maximum supply is 100 bill. With Ethereum, for example, the emission is not fixed, which means more supply, total supply, can come into the market, which means it's very difficult to calculate valuation when you don't have a fixed emission. Okay, so coming back to this circulating supply, which is what's circulating around the cryptocurrency markets and what's supposed to be sitting with clients and whatnot, we assume that that's supposed to be right, but we know for a fact that it's not, because what happens in other markets, fiat markets, for example, this 40 billion is adjusted every month to reflect an update of circulating supply. Now we know that it's already down to 37 bill because a very well-known person unfortunately died, and apparently rumour has it that this particular person had 3 billion XRP, and when this particular person died, the private key wasn't actually found. No one knew where this person put his private key, and basically 3 billion of XRP will never be found again. So we know that this circulating supply is probably down to 37 bill. And for all we know, with missing coins or private keys lost or coins put on computers and they're being thrown in the tip, that circulating supply could be 20 billion. And I did talk about that in another YouTube the other day. So when we talk about how can XRP, be traded with one XRP or just one trade at 334, when you look at the buy-sell spreads on the exchanges, as I said before, it depends on what someone's prepared to buy XRP at. Okay, and that's really important. So what we've got is we have all these different exchanges, unlike an equity exchange, which is one exchange, like the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. We have all these different exchanges that sometimes can have different prices, and arbitrage can be had. In other words, XRP could trade on Binance at a different price to XRP trading on Bitfinex, for example, on different exchanges. And within those exchanges, we have a public ledger and a private ledger. The public ledger being for retail clients like you, me, and most people, and the private ledger being for the over-the-counter market, which we don't actually see. And behind all those exchanges, we also have an institutional market. And that institutional market is all the big whales that play in that market as well. Like the fund manager I spoke about, who wanted to buy 50 million, the 35 million with the sales trader, who wants to buy at market with no buy limit for his client, the 800 million over the counter, the banks want to clear their FX funding through Ripple's trading desk, and the 40 mil over the counter, where it's a position out of stocks into the crypto market to buy again at market with no limit. Okay, there's no buy limit. In other words, they want to buy at market. They haven't given their broker a limit to buy at a certain level. Okay, so basically the new real positions that are circulating at the market at the moment are 125 million XRP. So if we look at the big exchanges, Binance, Bitfinex, Bittrex, say Bitbank, and Bithumb, who do the most amount of volume of XRP, will also hold in their own exchanges a certain amount of XRP for their own liquidity and to service their own clients. Okay, and that's what exchanges do. They will hold a certain amount of different cryptocurrencies so that they can also have liquidity in the exchange, and also so they can service their own clients. So say, for example, Binance is holding 50 mil, Bitfinex 25, Bittrex 30, and so on. So each exchange will have liquidity of, say, 75 mil for their own clients. If we now go to the buy, sell, so buy, sell, or bid, offer, and say we're looking at Bitfinex's order book, which is basically the public order book that we all see. Say the bid or the buy, there'll be one person that wants to buy at 53 cents 257. That's what they're prepared to pay. And the offer is someone wants to sell 20,000 at 55125. Okay? Now, if there's no agreement between the two, there'll be no trade. There'll be no last trade. That could sit there forever and a day if one doesn't move against the other. Okay? Now, I just want to make that clear. If the seller doesn't bring down his sell level at 55,125, or the buyer doesn't bring up their buy level from 53,257 to at least meet the seller halfway, nothing will get traded and there'll be a standoff. Okay? Now, don't forget, in these markets, someone can be more active and say, right, I want to buy XRP at a higher price. And so they'll put in a higher bid. And don't forget, there's an ordering system, okay, in the public ledger, if you want to call it that, or the public book. So you would have someone else going, I'm prepared to pay 54 cents for XRP. And that bid, that buy, will go to the first level of this here, okay? It'll be the first buy against the offer. Again, if we have someone on the sell side or the offer side, means the same thing. Someone prepared to sell at 54 cents and we have a buyer at 54 cents. Those two will be matched and that will be the last trade of XRP at 54 cents. I hope that makes sense. So that will get traded away. And then if there's any residual, the residual will stay waiting for someone else to sell at 54 cents. Okay, and then we have, as I said, an ordering system where the next highest bid will come up or the next lowest sell will come up. Does that make sense? I hope so. So if we go to Binance, for example, and we're coming to a picture here, and I hope this is clear because it was probably the best way I could think of doing this. So we have Binance's order book, another exchange's cryptocurrency public order book. We have bids, buy bids on this side, and we have offer and sells on this side. If you add these up, it's probably about the same. But so we've got, if nothing gets traded, we have a standoff, okay? But all of a sudden we might have someone come on the buyer side all of a sudden with 100,000 they want to buy on the buy side, 100,000, and they want to buy them at 55. Okay, or they want to buy them at market. So in other words, they've been given an order from someone to buy something at market, say 100,000. Okay, now technically speaking, if they're being given an order to buy 100,000 at market, 100,000 XRP, it means all these are going to be taken out. Okay, even this one here, 334. Okay, so what that means is, if that's the case, the last price for XRP on Binance's order book, their public order book, will be 334. Okay, now anything after that for the sellers will see the last price was 334. And they will not sell for anything less than that or slightly less. So in other words, if they see the last price was 334, the offer or the next seller might put up their sell level at 329. And the buyers and the bid will still have their bids at these levels, but the seller is not prepared to sell unless they get $329, okay? And again, there will be a standoff between the buyer, the bid, and the offer and the seller. You'll still have the buyers at 53 cents odd, but you'll have the seller now at $329, okay? We are coming to a story here. So then, and because the market's not just made up of retail players, but it's made up of all those institutional players I was talking about, then all of a sudden, as I said, we've got Binance's order book where they've got 54 or 55 cents on the bid side, on the buyer side, and then they've got seller now at $329 or $334. Binance has their own order book and they have internal XRP of 50 million. Okay, now all of a sudden, Binance has got this situation. So you had all the old buyers here, but all of a sudden, someone's put in a bid for 2,000. They're prepared to buy XRP at $329 against the sellers that are prepared to sell at $334. You see what I'm saying? And these offers here are being disclosed. Okay? Now, when we talk about so what happens here, all of a sudden we find that the market potentially is starting to get lifted in the public order book, okay? And then it also gets lifted in the over-the-counter book, the over-the-counter order book, which is the private order book. If internally Binance gets lifted in the internal private over-the-counter book, all of a sudden their 50 million they had for liquidity, they don't have it anymore. And Binance themselves will have to go to other exchanges or to other clients to try and get their 50 million back, which they need for their own exchange to service their own XRP clients. I know this sounds complicated, but this is pretty much how it works. So what Binance will do is they'll either go to their own client base or they'll go out and try and source XRP. And what they might do is go to other exchanges to try and get filled. They'll go to Bitfinex, which had 25, Bitfinex, which had 35 million, and so on and so forth, to get filled so that they get back their 50 million. Okay, now the question is, because we've got all these different exchanges, you know, will Binance pay 55 cents or will they pay 334? Because we have different exchanges within cryptocurrency markets, well over 600 or so, regional and national exchanges, we find ourselves with an arbitrage. And what that means is the same product, being XRP, is selling at different amounts on different exchanges. Okay? And that's an arbitrage, where you could buy low on one exchange at 55 cents and sell high on another at $334. So Binance would try to get filled with their 50 million because they've been lifted from the private over-the-counter book, and all of a sudden this 55 cents on the other exchanges will suddenly come to a peak around that $300 level very, very fast when Bitfinex and Bitrex realize that XRP is trading at over $300. So the question is, what is the real price of XRP? All of a sudden we've gone from 55 cents to $334 because a client was prepared, a buyer was prepared to buy XRP at $334. It was a legit trade the seller sold it at $334 and the buyer bought XRP at $334 in the market, in one exchange. So what would happen through all the other exchanges? There will be arbitrage, where you'll be able to go very quickly to all the other exchanges and buy XRP low and sell it on the higher priced XRP exchange. That arbitrage will be closed down. I don't know how long it will take within the cryptocurrency exchanges, but it would get closed down. In other words, either the 334 goes lower or the buy price goes higher. But either way, you're going to eventually have the buy and the sell being very closely aligned. Okay, so Binance being lifted off their over-the-counter book from the large clients that I spoke about earlier would basically be forced to buy from other exchanges. And when those other exchanges find out that XRP is traded higher, those other exchanges will suddenly mark up their XRP at higher levels. Okay, now it's very different to an electronic stock exchange where there's just one stock exchange, like the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, because, you know, prices are incredibly transparent, or, you know, you can only see, you know, a price moving, say, from $10 to $10.50 with very illiquid stocks that jump, you know, 50 cents because there's not a lot of liquidity. But even with XRP, there's there's heaps of liquidity. It is still very possible for XRP to go up by a lot, just because a buyer is prepared to pay a price that was put on the exchange as an outlier price. It is possible, and it certainly happened in fiat markets. So that's food for thought, guys. I hope you learned something from that. I hope it was clear. And please do look after yourself. This is education only. Food for thoughts. Food for thoughts, is that how you say it? Yeah. I didn't put my face on today because I get sick of looking at myself. And but yeah, please where's that thing gone? Please be really very much appreciated. Sorry, lost it now. If you support this Kickstarter thing, because it's going to be a great course, guys. Really, it's only going to be $50 US. Value is 150. It's going to be really great videos, great learning material, talking about technologies and everything. I really know my stuff, and I'd really appreciate it if you support it. I'm pretty tired at the moment, so I think it's about 5 o'clock a.m. in the morning here in Australia. So please do look after yourself, be kind to yourself, get plenty of sleep, don't do what I do, look after your family and friends. Life is very short. Look after your putty cats, look after your beautiful animals, and please be nice to people and just make this world a better place. Thank you.